filling out a roll call for all the shifts. And as Fox 5's More Sticks reports, the situation has an impact both inside and outside the department.
Multiple sources inside the APD and at City Hall are telling me that police supervisors have had to deny days off to the police officers. And keep in mind, this is during a normal work week, nothing requiring extraordinary events or coverage. Atlanta cannot graduate police recruits quickly enough to stem the number of officers leaving. Another 15 did so in the month of December.
APD slated for right at 2,000 men and women, and I don't know the exact number, but I know what I do know is it's under 1,600.
The worsening manpower can have an impact, obviously, on the safety of the streets, but there's an additional issue that has arisen after a 2020 year of extraordinary events that included some police sick-outs, essentially protests, and disputes about how the city handled officer-involved confrontations. Now, during what city leaders would hope would be a return to normalcy, overall manpower has gotten so low. The remaining officers are frustrated when they ask for time off that they are due.
But they can't take the time off because if they take the time off, they leave the city short of manpower. Are they up to the par that they should be because of, where they're at? Mentally at that point and physically.
A member of the Council Public Safety Panel says overworked officers is not healthy for staff nor good for the city residents.
I heard that officers are going to doctors and getting doctor's notes for I'm stressed out, I have to take time off, the first thing that comes to mind to me is the city's liability with the officers not getting the time off that they have earned, deserve and need, and that is very concerning.
There's a city council paper to give a retention bonus to the officers to remain with the city. Now, the union says that's a good idea, but the larger issue is the officers need to feel that they are supported by City Hall in the tough decisions they have to make out in the street. From Zone 2 in Buckhead, I'm Morse Diggs, Fox 5 News.
And we also learned last week
and was taken into custody Saturday. The FBI this week also charging 60-year-old Richard Barnett, seen in photos with his feet up inside Speaker Pelosi's office. Adam Johnson, he was seen carrying Pelosi's lectern out of the building. And Derek Evans, a newly elected West Virginia lawmaker who resigned from his position after streaming himself at the raid live on Facebook. The chaos Wednesday has triggered calls for the president to resign for his role in inciting the violence or face a second impeachment.
Donald Trump must be removed from office immediately and thrown out of 1600 Pennsylvania Avenue and forever banished to the dustbin of history.
And it's not just Democrats leading the effort. A number of House and Senate Republicans are also saying the president committed impeachable offenses.
I do think the president's behavior this week does disqualify him from serving. But we've got 10 days left, 11 days left. I don't know whether logistically it's actually even really possible or practical.
With just a few days left in the president's term, a potential impeachment would be largely symbolic, but it could cause Trump to lose his post-presidency pension and other perks and disqualify him from running again in 2024. House Democrats could introduce articles of impeachment against the president as early as Monday. Charles Watson, Fox News.
Tactical gear just in case he was attacked by counter-protesters. It says he found the zip ties on the floor, was going to give them to a police officer. And another man, Lonnie Kaufman of Alabama, was charged after a search of his pickup truck uncovered 11 Molotov cocktails. They consisted of mason jars with melted styrofoam and gasoline, a really dangerous combination. Another man, Cleveland Grover Meredith Jr., arrested for threatening Speaker Nancy Pelosi. Meredith reportedly protested here in Georgia recently as well, attending a demonstration outside the home of Governor Brown.
Just everyone else that was coming at us after as well. And then to Theron's point, the African-American vote definitely positioned themselves as a swing vote. And so that definitely played a role. But I have to say that about 100,000 people who voted in the general election did not vote in the runoff election. And I know that definitely impacted us as well. So, the division in the party definitely played a bigger role than what I guess we anticipated. But I don't know if I can say the state's blue because with us, Public Service Commissioner Bubba McDonnell winning, it shows that we definitely have the numbers to win a Republican race. So it's going to definitely be a battle to the end. We're definitely a swing vote. So congratulations to Bubba.
Well, Kathy, I said Georgia was purple after Joe Biden's win because it was so close, but I think it's safe to say Georgia is now blue.
I think we're now blue, but I think we can't, as Democrats, I think we can't kind of rest on our laurels. It is very close. The Senate races were definitive, though. It's important to note that Warnock won by 1.8%, according to the count right now, and Ossoff about 1%. So they're beyond the recount number of 0.5%. And so that's decisive. But I think Democrats now have to really consolidate here in this state and in Washington and state priorities and move forward and execute as well as we did in the election. But I expect what you'll start to see is us as Democrats sort of building on the work that we've done to date and moving forward strongly in the upcoming elections 2 years from now.
Phil, sadly, these Senate races were overshadowed by the events at the U.S. Capitol, where we know a Kennesaw woman lost her life amidst the violent protests, also a Capitol police officer. What a sad day in America. Your thoughts?
I agree, and I think probably all of panelists here on the show, regardless of our politics, agree it was outrageous, disgraceful to see what happened. It was a political event, and it got out of control. And this is, unfortunately, I'm afraid we're going to see more of this. And we saw it building in 2015. We saw America being polarized, and of course the national pundits will be talking a lot about this for a while to come. And I think in Georgia you saw the polarization too. And when you've got an action in life as well as in politics, you're going to get a reaction. And I don't think people were expecting it. I don't think President Trump was expecting after his rally that extremists would hijack. We've heard this summer and this fall from the left and the liberals that, wait a minute, we had peaceful protests that were hijacked by extremists. Well, okay, but that can happen on the right, too. And it's certainly not a pleasant picture for America. And I think the obligation is on President-elect Joe Biden to try to unify. He's had some good speeches talking about unity, we're all Americans, and then he flips and then starts attacking Republicans and Trump. And I think the talk, the trashing of President Trump, well, I don't like what happened any more than anybody else does on January 6th. I think you don't want to throw gasoline on the fire here, and I would hope that Democrats and Republicans would try to stress unity in the days to come.
But Aaron, I don't think
He said, well, people will do what they're going to do. Nadler called it a myth. Kamala said protesters are not going to let up, and neither should they. If we are to really move forward, we have to take responsibility. While I certainly condemn, and I condemned it immediately, the actions that took place on Wednesday, for Dems, we dealt with this for 7 months. It took, in some cases, 60 days for Democrat leadership to say anything as people's businesses burned to the ground, which is also sacred to them because many people put their life savings into their businesses, and no one had anything to say. Horace Lorenz Anderson died in a chop zone, and not one Democrat leadership to this day has said his name or said anything about that. So we have to be honest with ourselves, all of us that have platforms, and be responsible for the role that we all played as we sit around. And sometimes I look at the leadership and I wonder if we are moving people's emotions around like pawns on a chessboard in order to gain political power. And so I think if we're all not going to take responsibility, I agree with Phil, this is not going to stop. People's emotions are going to continue to drive their actions.
Kathy, I hate to cut you short, but just about 30.
President, that's where they get their signals from. The president went out and ordered the removal of demonstrators near the White House so he can stand up with an upside-down Bible in front of St. John's Church. These people got their signals from him.
Peaceful protesters. I wonder if he wants to call the takeover of Seattle peaceful. This guy's a moron.
Just addicted to his Twitter feed. So he will see this as a huge blow to him. I spoke to two people who have talked to the president in the last 24 hours. They told me he wasn't yelling or raging. He's obviously very angry about it. I know inside the White House right now they're trying to turn their attention for the next few days on how they can fight back against these social media companies. So I wouldn't be surprised. I know that, one person last night said to me, everything's on the table. I don't know what that means policy-wise. I said, are we talking executive orders? They said everything's on the table. I don't know what's achievable and what's realistic and what they can actually do in terms of executive action, but I can tell you they're looking very, very hard at that, and Dan Scavino, the president's social media guy, is heavily involved in that.
Rises up to the tweets of the President of the United States.
Well, they certainly have the ability as a private company to do anything that they'd like to do, and that includes deplatforming every conservative if they'd like to. I think the larger problem here is any effort, historically speaking, to stifle free speech ultimately has resulted in making the problem that you're trying to cure much, much worse, because ultimately all of this speech gets funneled down into smaller silos, to more extreme sects, to further radicalize and push away sort of mainstream thought. And I think you can see that already happening here. I'm less concerned about this in terms of what it means for Donald Trump's Twitter account. I'm more concerned about the precedent that it sets for conservative speech going forward. And I think that is what most Republicans and conservatives are looking at as a real problem for what Twitter has done here.
May encourage people to attack on January 20th because he won't be there. Marie, is there some tortured reasoning there to ban President Trump from Twitter? And what about the decision of Amazon and other big tech companies now to basically shut down Parler, which is a social media platform that conservatives have chosen instead of Twitter and Facebook?
Well, Chris, Donald Trump has arguably violated Twitter's rules that they have for their platform for years now. So while these last tweets that he posted may not have been his worst, certainly he has done worse things on Twitter. They were, I think, probably the last straw. And the most interesting part of Twitter's statement, actually, I think, was the last statement, how they have information both from their platform and from other sources that Donald Trump was encouraging violence around the inauguration to come. So not just punishing him for violence that already happened that left 5 people dead on Wednesday, but that they were looking forward and concerned about preventing further violence. And when it comes to where we've seen multiple people calling for Vice President Pence to be killed, including people that have been on President Trump's legal team. So I think these social media companies have always been drinking from a fire hose when it comes to hate on their platforms. But when they saw an insurrection jump from the pages of Twitter, from the posts of Twitter to real life on Wednesday, it was different for them. It became reality and not just words on a platform. And I think that's why they took such drastic action.
Still getting junk mail from these people. Why are these idiots keep sending this stuff out? Huh? Why y'all keep sending this stuff out?
Partisan camp, by the way. We're doing everything we possibly can to keep you safe. But it takes a little bit of initiative on your part and following the rules, because if you don't want to keep yourself safe, I'd like for you to keep your neighbor safe and me safe.
Speaker Ralston says emails were sent to every member notifying them that they are required to be tested every Monday and Thursday. Testing is available for lawmakers at the Capitol.
Several U.S. Congress members have tested positive for COVID-19 following riots at the U.S. Capitol. Congresswoman Pramila Jayapal tweeted about her results this morning. She said her diagnosis comes after being, quote, locked down in a secure room at the Capitol where several Republicans not only cruelly refused to wear a mask, but recklessly mocked colleagues and staff who offered them one. Like many government officials, Jayapal was forced to evacuate to safety last week when Trump supporters raided the Capitol building. Her staff said she went into quarantine following the lockdown in case she came into contact with the coronavirus. Jayapal says she will continue following her doctor's protocols while she works in
Partisan camp, by the way. We're doing everything we possibly can to keep you safe. But it takes a little bit of initiative on your part and following the rules, because if you don't want to keep yourself safe, I'd like for you to keep your neighbor safe and me safe.
Speaker Ralston says emails were sent to every member notifying them that they are required to be tested every Monday and Thursday. Testing is available for lawmakers at the Capitol.
Several U.S. Congress members have tested positive for COVID-19 following riots at the U.S. Capitol. Congresswoman Pramila Jayapal tweeted about her results this morning. She said her diagnosis comes after being, quote, locked down in a secured room at the Capitol where several Republicans not only cruelly refused to wear a mask, but recklessly mocked colleagues and staff who offered them one. Like many government officials, Jayapal was forced to evacuate to safety last week when Trump supporters raided the Capitol building. Her staff said she went into quarantine following the lockdown in case she came into contact with the coronavirus. Jayapal says she will continue following her doctor's protocols while she works in house attending physician. Schneider is the third member of Congress who has had a positive COVID-19 test result since last week's events. Of course, there's no confirmation these cases came from those events. He says he does have no symptoms and will remain isolated.
National Guard troops are patrolling the nation's capital with at least 10,000 expected to be in the area by Saturday. They will have a heavy presence over the next week leading up to President-elect Biden's inauguration. The increased security comes in response to last week's Capitol riots. An internal FBI memo warns of possible armed protests around the country in the coming days.
There were a lot of lessons learned from the January 6th mob violence at the Capitol, and one of those was the lack of numbers.
The FBI's warning.
I think it's causing tremendous danger to our country, and it's causing tremendous anger.
Republicans say moving forward with impeachment will only divide the country. Tonight, Democrats plan a vote to urge Vice President Mike Pence to invoke the 25th Amendment and remove President Trump from office.
Roll out to actually have an impact and go inside some of these garages to help us minimize some of the things that we're seeing.
And the chief says there's something that you can do to protect your property. All over the city, not just the parking deck situation. He says officers are finding that more than 70% of the motorists leave their key or one of those fobs inside the car or leave the vehicle running. He asks you to take time to secure your auto. Reporting live from Northeast Atlanta, I'm Morris Diggs, Fox 5 News.
Azar says one of the changes moving forward is that the federal government will base each state's allocation of vaccine partly on its success in administering the first dose. He also says the government will stop holding back the required second doses of the Pfizer and Moderna vaccines. Officials also urging states to start vaccinating people 65 years and older, which Georgia started doing on Monday. There's also a push for states to vaccinate younger people with certain health problems. Now, if you want to find out how you can sign up for a COVID-19 vaccine once you're eligible, we have that information on our website. Just go to fox5atlanta.com/vaccine.
Some substitute.
The danger is too great. We must impeach. Defend this Constitution from all enemies, foreign and domestic, including Donald J. Trump.
While 10 Republicans broke with President Trump voting to impeach, most stood by him.
He specifically told the crowd to protest peacefully and patriotically. The vast majority of them did.
Instead of stopping the Trump train, his movement will grow stronger, for you will have made him a martyr.
Exactly when the president's Senate trial will begin remains unclear. Senate Majority Leader Mitch McConnell says he will not use emergency powers to bring the Senate back from recess before next Tuesday. House Speaker Nancy Pelosi has already named 9 impeachment managers who will serve as prosecutors in the trial.
Today, in a bipartisan way, the House demonstrated that no one is above the law, not even the President of the United States.
To convict, 17 Senate Republicans would need to vote against President Trump. Now, we should point out that Georgia's House Republicans weren't among the 10 who voted with Democrats. Now we're waiting to see what happens next, but we know that Senate Minority Leader Chuck Schumer said that there will be an impeachment trial in the U.S. Senate. We're here on Capitol Hill. I'm Skyler Henry, CBS 46 News.
Now that the 15,000 mobilized for inauguration equals 3 times the number of U.S. troops in Iraq and Afghanistan combined. Well, the United States is known for sending in troops to prop up failed states. Hopefully, we'll greet our...
There's a
hard to go down this road of just believing mountains of misinformation, of supporting mountains of misinformation, and also in the same breath support democracy. They just don't line up with each other. Duncan removed both Beach and Jones from chairing Senate committees. The Lieutenant Governor's office declined to say why. It didn't set well with either senator. I mean, it was politics over policy, I can tell you that. And look, that's politics, and I'm a big boy, and I can accept that. And some people like to go down that road of quote-unquote punishing people. Didn't punish me. You know, life goes on with me. So if that was the intent of it, then it didn't hit its mark. Democratic State Senator Emanuel Jones supports the Lieutenant Governor's moves and says that letter to the Vice President was just a bad idea.
That was unfortunate for members that did that because it taints our state. We had free and fair elections in this state.
I'm Richard Elliott, Channel 2 Action News. And
fight for them, regardless of being in a minority, regardless of having all odds against us, against me, or against anyone in Congress. We have to hold people accountable.
Representative Marjorie Taylor Greene says she wants to charge President-elect Joe Biden with abuse of power. She plans to file the articles the day after Biden's inauguration. As expected, Greene voted against impeaching President Trump today.
I don't know who made that decision at these medical facilities and health departments to hold back on the vaccine, not doing anybody any favors. But you think it was the thing to do to make the Trump administration look bad? Somebody needs to think again. You're affecting people. Make it so people can't get the vaccine they want to take because y'all want to play games. Get your heads out your ass.
Other callers. Please continue to hold, and your call will be answered by the next available representative. Thank you for calling the Fulton County Board of Health COVID-19 hotline. At the moment, all of our representatives are